12.7 Predicting the Future Climate. Predicting future climate is difficult for many reasons. One of the main reasons for this difficulty is that the Earth system is very complex, and we do not yet understand all the important interactions that affect climate. Another large difficulty is lack of data. To get around both these difficulties, we use the concept of uniformitarianism. Remember, the past is the key to the present, or the present is the key to the past. In the near past, we have had the medieval warm period, about 950 to 1250 AD. That was warm, obviously. And the Little Ice Age, about 1450 to 1700. That was obviously cooler on average. We can use the historical and archaeological evidence to determine the effects of things being slightly warmer or cooler. Your book details some possible cultural and societal effects of climate change, so please read 12.7 if interested. I think the takeaway lesson is that climate change does affect us as a human race, and some humans will win and some will lose. So predicting the future climate would be very useful. The best way we know how to predict future climate is by constructing models. However, models are only as good as their data and mathematical algorithms. And guess what? We need more data, especially for the past few thousand years, minus the last 60 or so. Okay, young scientists, it's up to you. 12.8 Strategies for reducing the impact of global warming. Two important questions for developing strategies for reducing the impact of global warming are: 1. What changes have occurred to our climate? Frequency of storms, sea level, biosphere, economy, society, and politics. And 2. What changes could occur in the future? To answer these questions, we not only need to look at Earth as one large system, but also our entire human society and culture. We now know that warming is due in part to increased concentration of greenhouse gases. The reduction of greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide and methane is a primary strategy. The 1997 United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change in Kyoto, Japan was an international agreement to reduce emissions. Unfortunately, the United States has not honored the agreement. However, the European Union has become a leader on climate change issues. I'm glad someone is leading. Further, international and national policies are being formed, but the change seems to be small and slow. Frustrating, but no one wants to rock the boat too much, especially in the United States. My opinion, of course. So, if temperature increases on the low side, 2 degrees Celsius or 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit, we can adapt. If it is on the high side, 4 degrees Celsius or 8.2 degrees Fahrenheit, then consequences will be more severe. One way to estimate is to examine the geologic record for past change. Remember the concept of uniformitarianism? These temperature estimates suggest that upper estimates are not improbable. And we know that it will take time, several hundred years, for the climate to stabilize when emissions are scaled back. The graph below has time in years along the x-axis, and some relative qualitative scale on the y-axis. The scenario for the graph is if our peak CO2 emissions are in 50 to 100 years. How long would it take to stabilize sea levels, temperature, and CO2 concentrations? Atmospheric, I think. You can see that it takes a while for sea level to stabilize. 100-ish years. Temperature will keep rising for a while, but will take a few 100 years to stabilize. And CO2 concentrations will stabilize in a few hundred as well, at or near the peak CO2 emissions for a while, until significant amounts are reincorporated into the geo and biospheres. How long will that take? That is still up for debate, but probably on the order of hundreds of years or more. So how would we reduce emissions anyway? Let's just assume reduction of carbon emissions is necessary to keep the human race happy on the long run. Also assume that the human population and energy consumption per capita will increase. What should we do? What do you do? Do you reduce, reuse, recycle? Do you eat local foods? Do you eat less meat? Do you bike or bus instead of drive? Do you turn down your heater and turn up your AC? Do you have solar panels? If you'd like, you can email me what you are doing. I would love to hear your thoughts. There are lots of options on how to reduce our personal carbon footprint. Here's a few ideas on more community, national, global level. Improved engineering of fossil fuel burning power plants. Use those fossil fuels that release less carbon into the atmosphere. Conserve energy to reduce dependence on fossil fuels. Use more alternative energy sources. And store carbon in Earth's systems, such as forests, soils, and rocks below the surface of Earth. The graph to the right depicts greenhouse gas emission by electricity production for several energy sources listed along the x-axis compared to gram CO2 equivalents per kilowatt hour. Lignite is a type of coal. Gas is natural gas, methane. And so, based solely on this graph, what energy source would be the best for reducing the effects of greenhouse gas emission? Depending on the generation technology, it's pretty close tie between hydroelectric, wind, and nuclear. Of course, there's more to it than just one graph. Let's not make things too easy. Last but not least, abrupt climate change. I think this is a fascinating aspect to climate change. These are rapid, on the order of decades, fast changes. This could occur due to many reasons and cause several major problems with positive feedback cycles. One example is that as the planet warms, there could be a massive release of frozen methane hydrates that are at the bottom of the ocean, and a massive release of methane frozen in permafrost. The addition of all this methane to the atmosphere would cause even more warming. Colossal melting of glaciers and ice sheets would cause a huge impact on coastal communities and island nations. Lots of erosion, flooding, etc. But also the change in albedo of the land would cause more warming. Right. We're trading reflective light colored ice and snow for dark colored absorptive rock and soil, which would cause even more warming. Plus, colossal amounts of fresh cold water emptying into the ocean could disrupt the ocean conveyor belt. A vast disruption of the ocean conveyor belt, which we've already talked about, would result in drastic changes to temperature in specific locations like Europe. Fishing areas might also significantly shift. Both of these are very serious problems with vast impacts to society. Think of the agriculture and fishing industry. Think of the food. Think of your stomachs. And this change could happen quickly enough that as a society, we might not cope with it very well. As climate changes, we have already seen changes in the hydrologic cycle and the average distribution of water in both time and location. Some areas get less precipitation in winter than what was normal, and so have more or longer droughts. Some areas get more precipitation in spring than what was normal, and so get more or bigger floods. But think of catastrophic changes in the hydrologic cycle. Think of California had even having even longer, more severe droughts. And what would that do to our fruit and vegetable industry? We already know that as a society, we do not deal well with droughts. They cost us a lot. Same with flooding. Abrupt climate change would make these changes in the hydrologic cycle even worse for us. The book says that abrupt climate change is unlikely over the next century. Good. I'm glad to hear it. But over the history of the Earth, it has happened. And so based on uniformitarianism, it will happen again at some point. But I'm pretty glad I'll be dead when it happens. So in conclusion, what will our Earth be like in 100 years or 1,000? Will it look like this, a desert? Will it look like this, devoid of glaciers? Maybe in some areas, yeah, sure. We've changed the atmosphere of our planet, which will cause changes. Remember, environmental unity. But since we are aware of what we are doing and are aware of at least some of the consequences, we can do something about it. The end. Phew.